Welcome to The Explainer. This is where we break down really fascinating research into stories that are clear, engaging, and hopefully pretty interesting. Today, we're going to uncork a brand new study that gives us a peek inside the mind of the modern wine drinker in India.
Now, that might sound like a pretty strange question, right? But stick with me because by the end of this explainer, you'll know exactly which of these new types of wine drinkers you might be, all thanks to some research that dug into a huge shift in how we all behave.
Okay, let's dive right in. Our story really kicks off with that global event that, well, it changed pretty much everything, including why, where, and even how we choose to have a drink. So think back to when the world went into lockdown. Something really interesting started to happen. Wine drinking, which used to happen in restaurants and bars, suddenly moved right into our homes. And this wasn't just a small tweak, it was a total rewrite of the rule book, especially in India, where home delivery of alcohol was suddenly a thing. This created a whole new world for researchers to explore.
With socializing pretty much off the table, the actual reasons people were pouring a glass of wine started to change. It wasn't about big parties or fancy dinners out anymore. And that created a huge question mark for the entire industry, and for researchers too.
And this became the central research question, the big mystery for a team of academics. With everything turned completely upside down, they wanted to figure out who are the new faces of wine drinking in India. What actually motivates them now?
So how in the world did they crack this case? Well, this was no guesswork. The researchers used a really sophisticated scientific approach to get to the bottom of what was truly going on.
They basically had this powerful four-step process. First up, they surveyed over 400 people who drink wine pretty often. Then, they used some serious statistical analysis to find the key things driving their behavior. Now, the really crucial third step was using a cool technique called latent profile analysis to group people into distinct segments. And finally, they double-checked these groups and started building a profile of who was in them.
Now, the core idea they used is absolutely fascinating. Instead of just looking at the usual stuff like age or income, they zeroed in on something called wine-related lifestyle, or WURL. This goes so much deeper. It looks at a person's actual activities, their interests, and their opinions, all related to wine. And when they crunched all that survey data, these 5 key dimensions just popped out. It wasn't about red versus white anymore. It was about how people drink. Do they love the ritual of it all? Do they only drink in certain situations? Is it about fitting in with the crowd or just pure enjoyment? And how much do they rely on advice? These 5 factors became the building blocks for their entire discovery.
So what happened when they put this toolkit to work on all that data? Well, what they found was incredibly clear.
The analysis didn't find one type of new wine drinker, or 5, or even 10. Out of all that complex data, just 3. 3 distinct, totally clear-cut groups emerged from the numbers. And here are the results of that analysis. The largest group, and I mean by a lot, making up nearly half of all consumers, they called the ritualistic loner. Then you have 2 smaller, almost equally sized groups, the casual nonconformist and the curious conformist.
And this chart just brilliantly shows you how different they really are. I mean, look at this. The curious conformist scores super high on drinking to fit in with social norms. The ritualistic loner? The complete opposite. They, on the other hand, score highest on ritual. They just love the process itself. Each group has its own unique fingerprint, all based on those 5 lifestyle dimensions we just talked about.
So who are these people? I mean, really? The next step for the researchers was to go from these abstract labels to really detailed profiles, so let's break them down.
So on one hand, you have this really stark contrast. The curious conformist is often a younger guy, maybe a student, and he drinks to socialize, to be part of the group. But on the flip side, the casual nonconformist is more likely to be a woman who really isn't swayed by what everyone else is doing. She'll look for information, sure, but in the end, she trusts her own taste.
Okay, now let's circle back to that biggest group, the ritualistic loner. Just like the name says, their defining feature is a super high score on ritual. They love the whole process, the right glasses, the decanting, getting the temperature just right. But, and this is critical, they have really low scores for social norms. They just don't need a party or peer pressure as an excuse to open a bottle.
And here's a key takeaway from the study's discussion. The researchers make a pretty compelling argument that this huge segment probably grew so much because of the pandemic. It makes sense, right? When your home becomes the main spot for everything, drinking naturally becomes more of a personal experience. The focus moves away from the social event and onto the personal ritual. This is honestly one of the biggest stories the data tells. So this is all really interesting, right? But beyond just being a cool snapshot of human behavior, why does this research actually matter? What are the practical implications of all this?
Well, if you're in the wine industry, this is basically a roadmap to success. It shows that the old one-size-fits-all marketing approach is, frankly, doomed. If you want to reach that young, social, curious conformist, you've got to be on social media. To get the attention of the ritualistic loner, you have to focus on quality and that at-home experience. And for the casual nonconformist, it's all about providing good information and education.
This one quote from the study really just nails it. It perfectly highlights that fundamental shift that's underneath everything we've talked about. Our homes became the new center of our universe, the new coffee shop, the new restaurant, the new everything. So in the end, what this explainer really shows is the power of good, solid research. It takes a messy, complicated, fast-changing market and gives us a clear, validated framework to actually make sense of it all.
And that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. This study captured a really unique moment in time. But as the world keeps moving forward, are these changes permanent? Are we all still, deep down, just a little bit of a ritualistic loner at heart? Well, that's the big question for the future.